The Chinese philosopher Sun Tzu claimed that if you know your opponent's plan, you can crush him even in 100 battles. And that's exactly the strategy we're going to follow against the Caro-Kann Defense, which is supposed to be the most stubborn chess opening breached by many, and yet there is a line where you can defeat black within just 5 moves. And it's crazy to think about it, but it's true. I'm going to prove it within a minute. So instead of going for the main lines, you play a bit mysterious move knight to e2. And at first, it may not be clear why would you play that, but we'll see that in a second. Black goes pawn to d5 because that's the point of the whole Caro-Kann system, and then you push the pawn forward to e5. Now in this position, black will usually go bishop to f5. Why would they do that? Well, they gotta develop somehow, and if they play pawn e6 to give way to this bishop, that locks this bishop behind the pawn chain. It can no longer be developed. That's why Caro-Kann players usually play bishop f5 first, and then play pawn to e6. That's how they handle it in similar positions of the Caro-Kann defense. But now, thanks to this knight on e2, you jump suddenly to d4, and you attack this bishop. Your opponent thinks, okay, I can just drop it back, but then you play pawn to e6, and this central thrust disrupts black's position. Because just look at this, like, this pawn can no longer move, therefore the bishop can no longer be developed, black can no longer castle, and it's just all annoying. By the way, this pawn is defended by your handy knight on d4. Therefore, if they capture, you just recapture, and black's position is also somewhat weakened. In most cases, your opponents will notice that, this whole thing is annoying, they'll get rid of this, and they'll play pawn to c5, trying to get rid of your annoying knight on d4, and that's exactly what we're waiting for. And that's the most played move by black, by the way. So here, instead of moving the knight, we play bishop b5 check to the king, and basically it's game over. The only way for black to cover the king without too significant material loss is knight to c6, but after knight takes, just look at this. You grab the knight, and if they recapture after bishop c6, oh my god, that is a complete devastation. Now, the only way to cover the king would be to give up the queen, and after that you grab the queen, then you gobble up the rook, and within just a couple moves in the game, you grabbed, a queen and a rook and a knight, and it's just complete devastation. Now let's see how realistic it is for you to catch your opponents that way. So against the Caro-Kann defense, we play the move knight e2, certainly not the mainstream move. You can see that by far the best move, not the best, but the most played move by black is pawn to d5, we play pawn e5. Again, in most cases they play bishop f5, we play knight d4, attacking the bishop, they in most cases drop it back, we play pawn e6, and the most played move by black once again is pawn to c5, with the average rating of players playing this is 1900. And after they play this, you can see that we go bishop b5, and the computer gives you plus 5.5, something like that, so that's completely devastating. Another thing that I love about this trap is that it is really trappy. I mean, you've got traps all over the place. Just think about this. Your opponent, if he is a little bit advanced, is likely to notice that b takes c6 loses to your bishop recapture. And then they'll play queen to b6, counterattacking your minor pieces. Then you play knight c3, defending your bishop on b5. Your opponent at this point is probably quite happy. He recaptures a knight, thinking that now your bishop is forced to go back, and life's good. But you upset your opponent, once again, by playing knight takes d5. Oh, what's that? Well, the knight cannot be captured because the pawn is pinned down to the king. And how about this bishop? Does it drop the bishop? Well, if they play queen takes b5, they're welcome, because knight to c7 is a triple fork, and you're gonna grab their queen on the next move. So that's quite nice. Now let's take it back. Let's say your opponent is really smart, he figured it out, he plays queen to b7, the only move to avoid an immediate loss, so that the queen still defends this pawn on c6. Now he thinks, oh, I mean, still white has these hanging pieces, maybe he's in trouble. And so you play another spectacular move, bishop to a6. Once again, shocking your opponent, and once again offering this bishop to them. So if they want to capture the bishop, cool, it's the same knight to c7 fork. Not exactly the same, but very similar. So let's take it back. Let's say your opponent is a genius, and he finds out that this does not work. So the queen has to go back, and the queen still needs to cover the square c7. So queen b8 is the way to go. But after that, there are different ways for white to handle this situation. Basically, your life is good because, he's got all this kind of mess with his position. It's really difficult for him to untangle and to get rid of all these weaknesses. But the move that I love here is queen to g4. So initially, you pretend like you just defended this pawn on e6, okay? So that if he captures, you can recapture with the queen, something like that. But your opponent may think, hey, wait a second, I can finally grab this annoying knight. And if he does, all of a sudden it's checkmate. Queen to a4, and your queen delivers this sneaky checkmate on the d7 square. That is unbelievable. Another advantage of this trap is that you're never at risk. If your opponent somehow does not fall for any of those traps, you just end up with a normal chess position and you keep playing chess. That's it. Okay, I also understand that some people always claim that you can become a strong player by following opening traps, and I agree to this wholeheartedly. So if you want to brush up your positional play, check out this free masterclass where I'm teaching you those principles of positional play. I hope you're having a great rest of the day. Take care.